Welcome to A Call to Healing. I'm your host, Melanie McDaniel. Today's guest is Maddie Hundley. She's an intimacy coach and a licensed therapist. Today we cover practical tools for rebuilding connection, why intimacy is so much more than just sex. We also talked about things like desire differences, painful sex, communication, and emotional safety, and long-term love. This is a juicy one, so let's dive in. Hello, Maddie. Welcome to A Call to Healing. I'm so excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, it's so nice to be here.
So let's get started with kind of who's Maddie, where are you from, how did you get to what you're doing today? And I'm super excited to get into what you're doing, but like, who is
Yeah,
Maddie?
it's a big question. Well, I think I'll skip ahead to when I was in college. So when I first was in college, I just had a lot of curiosity about sexuality and intimacy. And so it all started with a psychology class and a human sexuality class, and I got really interested. And so at the ripe age of 18 or 19, I started focusing all of my attention on intimacy and sex and relationships. And so I kind of had this unique, thing where I could really specialize in something while I was still really young. I worked with the Sexual Health Alliance, and I was able to do conferences and work with CEUs and things like that when I was very, very early in my career. Um, Once I graduated from St. Edward's University here in Austin, I moved to LA, and I went to University of Southern California. Um, it was about 3 months later that my now husband came to LA. And so I should mention that I met my husband when I was 18 years old, which is so, so young. And so, again, like we had this experience is not so unique actually, but of growing up together and figuring out who we are as partners through, the time period of your life where you change the most. And so, um, my husband and I, we lived in a 450 square foot box, a studio in someone's backyard. It had mold and it was gross and it was something. And we lived through COVID like that. And so we got very close. We ended up getting engaged through that. Everybody said, how could you do that? How do you guys not drive each other nuts? And we just, um, you know, Jared and I we've spent probably only like a couple of months apart in the last 10 years. I mean, it's really been really special to be in love like this. And so I think I knew the first day or first week that I met Jared that I think I went into a bathroom and told a friend, like, I'm going to marry that man. I was obsessed with him. And so through this like obsession, love, like for the first time, like experiencing sexuality and like what it feels like to be, you know, in a relationship and intimacy, and not just sex, but like true intimacy. And so that's really where the like excitement of it all kind of started. And so through courses, through trainings, through writing my thesis, through all sorts of stuff, I was able to just gain a lot of knowledge. And so when I applied to school, it was really clear that I had one kind of specialty in mind. And so a lot of therapists, when they start, you know, I just realized I never said that I'm a therapist. And so I'm actually a licensed marriage and family therapist. And what you realize in grad school is that there's a lot of therapy that has to be done on yourself. There's a lot of stuff that you have to go through. There's something called countertransference. And so when you're working with clients, you see things that might trigger you, that might remind you of your own life. And so um, through learning so much about myself and surviving grad school, getting engaged, getting married, all of that was all kind of in the background as I was really specializing all of my work in intimacy. And so every project I had, every chance I got, I would do something around intimacy. And so it was just really exciting to start my career feeling so knowledgeable in something. And I think that that was really good because I was like 23 when I first started seeing clients. Like I looked young. If I looked young now, like I looked so young. and suddenly I'm telling people about their marriages. It was something. And so yeah, I worked in Beverly Hills. I worked in West Hollywood. I lived in West Hollywood for a long time. And then I just needed more community, and so we moved back to Austin to have community. And so that's kind of like my story of where I've been and how I've gotten to where I am. But since then, I've written a book. I have it here, which is what it is. But I wrote this book. It's Different Me, Different Us, the readable part of couples therapy. And the first half of the book is really about the basics. So love languages, empathy, communication, all that good stuff. And then the second half of the book is all intimacy. And I like to have my work be palatable for even grandparents. So we're really talking about like very, very specific things. And we're talking about real uncomfortable things that people don't always want to, talk about. And I think that this book I have ADHD, so I didn't write any chapters that were longer than a page or two. So, therapy is really expensive. And I think that there's so much of it that I can give people without sessions. And so that's why I created that. And then since then, I've kind of just been seeing clients and, taking up quilting and trying to have new hobbies, that sort of thing. I'm probably missing big portions here, but my work today, I do individual sessions, I do couples sessions, and I sometimes do retreats. I do all of this virtually. I think people are much more comfortable speaking when they're in their own space, when they can be as loud as they want, when they feel comfortable to actually act the way that they normally would and not just sit in their chair and, wait and be the perfect therapy students. A lot of the couples that I see they're so happy. They love each other. Everything's great. They've built this, wonderful life for themselves, and then they just can't get it together. They just can't seem to break the seal. And so my job is to make it fun, make it something exciting, making it, talking about erotic tension, building that with each other, talking about empathy and validation. A lot of my work is about narrative. So I tell people that I don't have magic powers and I can't change your life, but I can tell you that the Grand Canyon looks a lot different from the bottom looking up than the top looking down, and it's all the same variables. And so our vantage point and what we choose to call our attention to is what our life ends up being. What we choose to talk about is the narration of our life. That is what our life is. And so a story that makes you feel shameful, a story that makes you feel not worthy of love, rewritten is a story of finding yourself. I'm thinking of a client right now, and just watching people go from the saddest that they've ever felt to just beaming. It feels like it's for me. It feels like feels like I should be paying for this service. It's so joyous. And yeah, there are a lot of sad sessions. There are a lot of angry sessions. There are a lot of frustrating sessions. But I don't know. I really enjoy it. I hate conflict in my own life, but for some reason, I'm really happy sitting in the middle of two people, having the worst conversation you can imagine. And yeah, so that's probably what I would say.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, a lot to dive into here. So I'll just get into some of the meat first of all. You mentioned some couples are happy and they come to you. Why are the happy couples coming to you?
Well, the happy couples are coming to me because they have put off coming to therapy for a really long time because their relationship feels great. They have, social things they go to. They feel, you know, um, they feel valued at work. Maybe they're a little stressed at work, but like things are generally okay. And then you kind of start to peel back the layers and you realize, well, they're really irritated with each other. Every time the dishes are just sitting there and it's never about the dishes. Oh my God, it's never about the dishes. And everybody said, no, it is about the dishes. You don't understand if they would just do the dishes. And it's like, it's not the dishes. It's, do you respect me enough to do the dishes? Do you, care enough to even notice the dishes. Like, it's these core parts of ourselves that come out. And you know, I think that couples, there are two kind of groups of couples. This is like the really happy couples that are very regulated and kind of have these regulated conversations, which is hard in its own way. And then you have the really dysregulated clients that are kind of like have really big reactions to things. Um, and they're very similar in a lot of ways, but the happy couples, I notice they just don't prioritize intimacy as the most important part of their relationship. They're best friends.
Yeah. Can I ask, when you say, okay, happy couples, but they have all these underlying issues, are they happy on the surface? Is that more
Yeah.
accurate? Okay.
I think that's, they come in first day, super smiling, like, great, we're great. We just, we want to talk about intimacy a little bit. And so that's kind of what I mean. Like, we pull back the layers and it's like, well, yes, you're happy. You're not going to get divorced. You love each other. And yet, there's kind of these small things that, when you feel like you're mothering someone, you don't feel sexy, right? And I talk about this a lot, but when you're, if you think about our bodies, it's just our nervous system assessing for danger, right? And it doesn't care about anything besides getting us out of danger. And we do not give birth or have sex when we are stressed. It's just like not how humans are wired. And so maybe you've heard there's like fight, flight, freeze, fawn, flail. I think there's another one they added, but um, all of these things we start to do when we get really overwhelmed and agitated. And so even these like happy couples where they look like they're very happy on the outside, when they're becoming dysregulated, they're still doing these things, even though they're not having the fight kind of reaction. They're having maybe the avoidance. They're having maybe there's a lot of things that are happening, because when everybody is kind of backed into a corner and they feel like they can't get out, you do whatever you need to get out of danger. And for some people, that's saying the worst thing you can imagine so the person goes away. For some people, that is, showing your wound and saying, please stop hurting me. There's a lot of different things. And so I think it's important when I say happy couples that we're talking about couples that are just more regulated. And they're couples that you would normally say, oh, why are they? That's weird. I wouldn't think they're in therapy. And so that's a long-winded answer, but
Yeah, no, that's a good difference. It sounds like there's still the issues in the marriage, but some come in more regulated than others, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming what they're looking for intimacy. I mean, the word intimacy and the word sex are not the same thing. So maybe explain the difference between sex and intimacy, and then are these couples coming in because of no sex or no intimacy? Or both?
It's a hard question because at first, yes, they're very different, right? Sex is. I like to think that the next sexual experience starts after the first one ends, right? You're kind of just like leading up to the next one, right? And intimacy is more emotional. Intimacy is feeling safe. Intimacy is your nervous system feeling calm. And I think that sex is the actions, the physiological responses, the arousal, the desire. And they're very intertwined. So at first, I want to say that they're very different. And then I start thinking about how intertwined they are in the work that I do. And so intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires safety, and it requires you not to be resentful. And so even couples that seem happy on the outside have resentment that's been built up. And so everybody, can have sex, right? But are you going to feel intimate with your partner? If you're having sex and the whole time you're thinking about how you don't like your body, you're not going to actually be present with your partner, and you're not going to be intimate with them. Maybe you're having sex, but you're not intimate. The other thing is that sex doesn't have to be penetrative. I say that, like, a car drives a whole bunch of different ways. It doesn't just drive 70 miles an hour on the freeway with the windows down. Sometimes you're in traffic. Sometimes you're just looking out the window. Like, sometimes we can experience touch without moving towards orgasm, right? And a lot of people think, you know, I don't feel aroused. I never feel, I have low libido. I just don't feel in the mood. And that's a really common thing, especially for women, because hormones change. And, you know, intimacy really wanes with the changes in how often people are close with each other. And so I think this is probably a good opportunity for me to share that I think about this in a probably different way. So instead of, you know, you get touched and you're aroused and you feel desire and then you have sex and it feels like this big thing that you do. Um, and I think I like to, let's see if I say it right, but I like to think about how sometimes I'm really hungry, I feel kind of nauseous, and then I get presented a burger. And that's not what I want to eat. I don't want to eat a burger. It's not what I wanted. I wanted a salad. I don't want a burger. And yet, if I just take a bite of the burger, my body sends signals to me that that's what it needed, that's what it wanted. And it's actually safe to relax. It's actually safe for your nervous system to relax. And now that we're relaxed, we can experience arousal because the touch at first feels like stimulation. Then the stimulation turns into, wow, this actually I'm aroused. That's something's happening with my body, which then can turn your brain on to say like, oh wow, I really desire what I'm doing, which makes room for pleasure. And so I think it's really hard to just skip to pleasure when you're not considering that intimacy and sex are intertwined. Um, I'm not sure if that answers it totally, but I think that's probably what I would say.
Yeah. So for couples that, I mean, I don't know why this happens. Maybe you can explain the psychology behind this. There's always like the joke, right? You have a bunch of sex, then you get married, and the sex stops. Like, what is happening here?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, I think probably the biggest reason is that when you get married, you've probably been together a bit longer. People who get married early on usually have blissful, first years of marriage. Um, I know so there's these silly things like year 3 is hard, year 7 is hard, and I hate to say it, yeah, year 3 was hard, year 7 was hard, and I think it's because you transition from novelty to something that is less novel. And the way our brain marks time or memories or just what's important that our brain thinks of is the novel experiences. So when you're a child, childhood feels endless because you're doing things you've never done all the time. In adulthood, you wake up, you make your coffee, you sit in your chair, you read your thing, you do this, you look at your phone, and you don't have novel experiences marking time. And so I think kind of the human experience as we get older is that we forget to be present, we forget to have novel experiences. And as I say novel experiences, I think I should probably make room for like, that's how kink is really exciting to people, right? Just novel experiences. Um, and so, um, yes, the joke is that people have less sex when they're married. The reality is that's kind of true. Um, and when you're in a marriage, sex also becomes not the only reason you want to hang out with it. Maybe the first few months you're with someone, you're every time you're hanging out, you're intimate with each other. You're so excited. Once you're living together and you see their naked body in the shower every day, they're in bed, you see them, they fart in front of you. Like it just becomes difficult. And so I talk about that like erotic tension. That's going to be the fact that like that's going to be when you're walking through your life and you feel comfortable and safe enough to grab your partner's butt and you feel comfortable and safe to receive that touch on your butt and know that that is not your partner taking you into the bedroom wanting to have sex. I think a lot of people, a lot of women reluctantly have sex just kind of on autopilot because it the frequency matters to their partner. But I think when you have frequency and you don't have connection, you don't have that intimacy, just leads to way less sex. And then what I'll tell you that I see happen all the time is people go a month, and they go 2, then they go 3, then they go 6, then they go a year, then they go 2 years, and suddenly they feel like they've never had sex before. They feel too uncomfortable. It comes with too many feelings. To even make a move towards sex means we have to talk about it. We're angry. maybe we feel like we've done 90% of the initiating and now they need to do 90% of the initiating, and that's just not going to happen. And we're angry, and every conversation comes back to sex. Like, it is this silent battle that most couples fight about. It's probably, it's like finances. You don't really share your financial troubles with too many people, the same way that other people don't get to see your sexual self, this part of yourself that is different. Only certain people who you choose to show it to get to see that. Um, and I think, I don't know, being a married person myself, I think being disconnected from that sexual self, right? Having moments where you're sick, your body doesn't look the way you want it to, your mental health is bad, you are having a hard time at work. And, you know, if you don't feel sexy, if you don't feel like you can be naked with yourself, how are you going to feel comfortable being intimate with someone else? Your head is not going to be in the game. And so, yeah, not sure how many metaphors I can make in this podcast, but I'll see if I can do more.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a real serious problem. So when you get couples like this, if it's been a couple years and there's a lot of tension there, like how do you get back? What is it? Self-work first? Is it understanding the difference between a man and a woman? Is it therapy for the relationship? Like where do you start with people?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think okay, so it depends on the couple. It depends on how squeamish they are. Depends on how comfortable I am saying certain things to them. If they're super comfortable, they want to talk about sex, like they just don't like those people, I jump into, psychoeducation and giving them activities. People love the activities. Oh my gosh. It's like nobody wants to, do 10 pull-ups, but if you have a coach next to you, like you're going to do it. Why are you paying the coach? They're just standing there looking at you. And it's like, sometimes you need that, right?
I assume you're not standing there looking at them though. Right? You give
No.
their assignment.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh. No, the assignments are never done live on camera. A lot of times at the end of the session, I'll be like, okay, and I'm going to hang up and I go away and I'm like, okay, now have your kiss. Because yeah, oh my God, it's hard sometimes. People come in, they're happy, they want to work on themselves. And by the end of the session, they're devastated. They're so upset. They're just like really upset. And so depending on the level of hope, depending on the level of excitement, that really changes how I talk to people. I guess I'll talk about some of the fun things that maybe other people could replicate. Yeah. It depends on the couple, what they feel comfortable with. But one of the ones I start with that is really easy is I have one of the people in the couple put their arm out like this. And I believe that this is Charlie Glickman, his work, but I apologize, I can't remember. But you start by saying, you just touch the other person's arm. So the other partner is touching the arm and they're just doing something. Doesn't matter what they're doing. Now, the person who's being touched, we want them to think about what is most pleasurable in that moment, what would feel better. And so I'm doing little tippy taps, right? And so the partner who's receiving the touch would maybe say, I want more pressure. So suddenly we have some more pressure on the tippy taps. And then maybe they say, actually, it would feel better if you moved your fingers around. So then we move our fingers around. And what we're doing is we're directing what we want to happen to our body, but in this way that feels safe. So I think that is the first one that is not very fun, I guess, but it helps us learn more about communication styles, all that sort of stuff. I have people do fun activities like the sexual blueprints. Miss Jaya, I believe, is the person who created that. And it is 5 different kind of archetypes that people can have as their sexual self, kind of what I was talking about before. So there's energetic, which means suspense, anticipation, teasing. You're sensitive to sexual energy, and you might find pleasure in non-contact play or emotional connections that happen before physical contact. There's the sensual kind, which includes all your senses. So you'll maybe take a lot of pleasure in having the ideal environment, candles, the right mood lighting, the right blankets, all of that stuff. Then there's the sexual subtype. So that is going to be, straightforward manifestations of sexuality and valuing orgasm, valuing physical appearance and arousal, kind of the thing you think of. A lot of men kind of fall into this category a lot of times. So then we got kinky. So novelty, kind of what I was explaining, is why it's so exciting. So this is all the unusual things: role playing, power dynamics, unconventional, forbidden, novel sexual practices, and people get pleasure from the psychological or physical aspects of kink. And so it's fun to kind of play around with those roles. It can feel safe to play around with roles if you're, the big boss guy at work. Maybe you need to feel, like you're being taken care of. Maybe if you find yourself feeling like you're the task manager, maybe you want to be told exactly what to be done. And that can be really sexy and fun for you. Um, so the last one is the shapeshifter, which is kind of just all of them. Like, it's kind of just malleable, and people kind of appreciate the range. And so by sharing these different kind of blueprints with couples, it's easier to talk about language. It's no longer just sex. It's what is exciting about sex. What is the ideal context for sex? What needs to happen? What can't happen? Does the laundry need to be done? Do the kids need to be in bed? What needs to happen for, you know, for ideal context to happen? A lot of people don't like the mornings or don't like the evenings, and so talking about timing is actually really important. Um, Years ago, I created this sexuality card game, and it has all sorts of questions that kind of help people move through difficult conversations about sexuality. Um, so that is one of the activities I like to do. And then the last game that I really like to have couples try out is the stopwatch game. And so this is something I came up with, and the way it works is you set a timer. Doesn't matter for how long. Could be 30 seconds, could be 2 minutes, could be 5, 10, doesn't matter. During that time, you have rules. So maybe the rules are that you need to keep your clothes on, you need to keep your hands off of each other, and so you do that until the timer goes off. You then know that when the timer goes off, something else is allowed to happen. So maybe you're allowed to take your clothes off. Maybe you're allowed to use your mouth. Maybe you're allowed to touch certain parts of their body. And then the timer goes off again. And at this point, some anticipation, some excitement, some maybe fear, just all of these things are going to come up. But there's going to be something in your brain that knows what is coming next. You're going to feel safer. And it's a way, I think, that people can tiptoe back into being with each other, especially if it's really awkward, right? Like, the first 2 minutes are going to be awkward. And I always tell couples, like, I don't think you're going to divorce over one awkward sexual experience. So jump in, break the seal, you know, have the worst sexual experience of your life so that you can start having better sex. And so, yeah, those are some of the activities that I do with couples just in the beginning. I have a lot of ones that I do later on, but I think those are easily replicated at home.
Yeah, beautiful. Can you talk about some of the differences between men and women as far as
Yeah.
I think for women, we need more safety in order to open. What do men need? Like a little, whatever you want to talk about, but the differences between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I've been really lucky to work with a variety of people in all sorts of bodies and all sorts of genders. So I'm not sure I would say men and women are the difference. I think it has a lot to do with hormones. So I say that testosterone is the get up and go kind of hormone, and it creates that ability to initiate a lot easier. Testosterone creates is helpful in a lot of ways, but it's also not helpful in other ways. And I think women, obviously, we talk more about, I think, estrogen and the way that the body changes and their hormonal fluctuations. And I think it's important that we recognize that women are on a monthly calendar, 28-day cycle usually. And so I can't remember the statistic exactly, but I think it's like 1,200 percent difference between hormone levels at different types of the month. And if men experience that, it would just feel uncontrollably, devastating for them. I just don't know if their brains understand how much of a fluctuation we have. Men are on a 24-hour clock, and what that means is that it's 8 a.m. and suddenly we see our arousal pretty clearly when we wake up. Suddenly we see something out in the wild and you have a very physical manifestation of your desire.
I think we were all programmed a certain way, and as we age, like a maturity comes in. So,
Yeah.
but men and women, I don't think are on that same schedule. And women, like our issue, I think, is we don't know how to speak up for ourselves. We don't like the pleasure thing, the safety thing, and then the men, same thing. They weren't taught to provide the safety. Therefore, like, I think it's supposed to be a
Yeah.
beautiful like
Yeah.
connection. But I'm trying
Yeah.
to pull out of you like what are the issues, and then I want to say, okay, now what can men do to
Mm-hmm.
do what the women need, and what do women need to do in order
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
sexually aroused as well?
So I think this is a really perfect opportunity to talk about the dual control model. And what that is that I like to think about the car. This has been said before, but our if we are a car, for like a little sex car, and if we're a car, I don't know anything about cars, but I do know that if you push the accelerator and then you push the brake at the same time, you get a lot of noise and it doesn't go anywhere and it's horrible. So basically, like, we can't feel like the brake is on while the arousal is on. It's just not going to work. And so the the thing that women struggle with a lot is feeling like the task manager in their home. And so during sex, they're feeling like they can't relax. They're feeling like they're maybe not attracted to their partner, kind of resentful. Um, I think men find security in the physical closeness, and once they feel that physical intimate physical touch, they then feel like they can emote and be there with their partner. And then unfortunately women want to feel that security and emotion, and then it leads to sex. And so it's this hard thing of like chicken or the egg, like where do we start here? And as we know more about women's hormones, we are learning a lot more women are going through perimenopause early. And so I think also just psychoeducation that women's bodies change. There are times of your life where you give birth. There are times where, there's just so many different variations of who you will be. And so probably to bring it all back to relationships and maybe even my own marriage is just figuring out who you are along the way and then realizing that it changes constantly. And when I said I do to my husband, or back when I was 18, I loved him the way he was. I loved him in that form, and I said, I will love you forever and ever and ever because this is what I love. And then they change and they grow, and there's things that are different and they have different opinions, maybe the same way that your kids grow up and they're just like, wow, they have their own little personality. And so yeah, and so I think just figuring out who you are as people when you're young. I think that men can really help themselves, I think, if they listen to their partner and empathize with maybe how they would feel and then validate it. I always tell couples, like, the way to get out of an argument, or when you just are no longer interested in talking, Freaky Friday into the other person's body, sense in your body what is irritating, what is hurting, what is not feeling good. And then you say, I imagine this doesn't feel good. I'm noticing that if I felt that, I would be so upset too. That's all we want as humans. When the fire alarm goes off or we hear a loud noise, we look around to people to see, are we safe? Are you scared too? Are we okay? And so when we constantly have this situation where our nervous systems are on high alert every time we think about intimacy, there is just no way to have it happen. And so the brake is just completely firmly pressed. And so I think by using this metaphor, we can talk about, well, what are the brakes? Is it, when I have to tell you a million times to do the same thing, I think about that while you're coming on to me. I think about how I'm irritated. Sometimes you know, we all have these internal thoughts, and I think when we don't share them, the other person can sense something. We're all very smart, and we can all sense each other's emotions usually, maybe some more than others. And when we sense discomfort, when we sense that the other person is scared about something, they heard a loud noise and they're scared about it too, we're suddenly scared. And so I think co-regulation is really the important part here, because we can calm our nervous systems together, which leads to a path for intimacy. And so I think men could really help themselves if they realize that helping their partner have a calm nervous system is going to help them get what they want, right? And men, once they get what they want, they feel that emotional connection, and then it can kind of roll. But God, when we've had years without it, it is so difficult. Those are the cases that take years sometimes. And it's hard because those people want to stay married bad.
Yeah, I imagine there's a so I think I don't know if we talked about it yesterday when we had our call or if I read it on your website, but like for women, we'll talk about women specifically with our bodies. If we don't feel safe and we're tight, that sexual experience can actually be painful or tear things. Or, I mean, speaking from experience, there have been plenty of times where I'm just like, get this over with now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really sad. So, can you explain a little bit about, let's talk about the female body, because I think the men are a little more straightforward.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's going on in the female body when we're talking about this break and gas thing?
So sex doesn't always feel good for people. I think that that's not a secret, and a lot of people feel like they can't talk about it because something's wrong with their body. That's the number one thing that people think about, is that there's something wrong with my body. I don't experience sex the right way. I don't, I just, there's something wrong with me. And I think there's a book that I really, really like called Come As You Are. This book is written by Emily Nagoski, and I find that this book is kind of like the holy grail for people when they first enter therapy. It's like the very first book I tell people to get, and they come back and they go, oh my God, I don't feel alone. Oh my God, I had no idea that this is how my body worked. Oh my God. And when I read it, it was the same thing. Again, I have ADHD, so I bought the workbook. I think it's easier to get through. But that's just me. And so I think once you realize that you're not broken, that your body is just experiencing human body things. And when our nervous system, back to the idea that we don't have sex or give birth whenever we are stressed, maybe you've heard about women who are in active labor and they think they're about to give birth, and then they get to the hospital and they stall. They stall for hours and hours. It's the same thing with our body and our arousal for sex. And so when we have had sexual experiences in the past that are painful, or we've had situations where we're afraid, or we've had situations where maybe we were talked into things that we didn't want, our body tightens up. The same way that if you have been spanked by your parent, you brace yourself for the spank that you're about to get. You know what is coming, and so you're afraid of it. And so muscle guarding is really common. You just get really, really tight, and you're not as lubricated. And so what that means is that there's tearing. And tearing also, if you're with multiple partners, can be more risky. And so, yeah, I think a lot of times the people who are struggling with painful sex kind of keep quiet about it for a long time. And it's usually once their partner, a lot of times their husband, is angry, upset. And so I always refer people to pelvic floor physical therapy. There is a wonderful place that's in a lot of different states called Origin, pelvic floor physical therapy, and they're wonderful. It's like a almost like a gym for your pelvic floor, and they have these more kind of like manual internal kind of like where we're helping stretch and we're doing these things that are more invasive, and so other people might not feel comfortable doing those things. This can be for people who have leak, people who have just like weak pelvic floors after giving birth, people who have, I can't remember the word, but when your muscles separate, um, there's there's a lot of different reasons that pelvic floor therapy can be really helpful. And so the gym part is kind of helping you figure out which muscles to use. I found out when I went that I was doing everything backwards. I thought I was bracing and I was actually, I don't know. It was so weird to find out that something as simple as using the bathroom, I was using the wrong muscles. How weird. How weird that such a normal human experience I could be doing different, right? It's all interesting. And so um I am not a doctor. I can't help people specifically with their pain. The only thing I can do is provide education of where they can go. And so it's just not fair to say this is what causes pelvic pain, this is what causes muscle guarding, this is what causes vaginal pain. I think it's really nuanced, and so going to a doctor is always the first thing I would say to do. There's a lot of different things that can come up in your blood work that also can affect libido, and this is probably a very good time to talk about how SSRIs and mental health medication, the number one side effect is sexual side effects, and what that looks like is just a really, really big drop in libido. That I think is probably more common than I mentioned. It's a lot of couples who have mental health problems. They like their medication regimen, and yet they got to figure out how to have sex with their partner.
Is
So,
it both men and women are affected by that, the libido on SSRI?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, definitely. For men, sometimes it can look like the plumbing not working correctly, but usually it's just loss of libido. You don't have that initiating kind of desire anymore. And that can be really stressful for people in their partnership. There's a lot of things that can be challenging. This is a lot of times when people talk about opening the relationship, and that's a whole other subject. When one person wants it and the other doesn't, it can blow up really fast. But sometimes sex is outsourced because maybe you love your partner, you want to be with them, you've built a life, they are your partner, but you have sexual needs that you want to get met. Maybe you're queer and you didn't realize until after you were far enough into a relationship that you didn't want to end.
So we're talking about some of the tools if there's pain, but what if like the pain is not because of, well, it could be because of dryness or tearing, but if you're with a partner that you do want to work on this sexual stuff with, like, I'm sure there's a way to feel safe, to open up, to get the right lubricant that you need before the penetration, to avoid the tightening, to avoid the tearing and stuff. So I guess the question is like foreplay, how much is needed? I mean, the female being able to speak up and saying, I'm not ready yet. Like we need to try some other stuff. I'm not ready. So what is that conversation like, or what are those? I mean, I'm sure I'm on the right track a little
Yeah.
bit, but maybe you can clean up like what the recommendation is for couples that want it, but they do have these problems of pain.
I think because penises do their thing real quick, I think we forget that women need like 20 minutes to warm up before things are, engorged. Women also, have an erection, really. I think it's actually so cool that the structures are the same. I have a picture in here I could show, but it's the same tissue, and so it's really important to recognize that women are not going to have the uh, engorgement that they need, the lubrication that they need, all of that. So I think foreplay is really important. Um, but also, what is foreplay, right?
Question.
If we think of sex as if we think of sex as just penetrative, then everything is foreplay. But then if sex is only when you're having penetrative sex, then I guess you're not having sex very much or often. And I think it's more fun when sexual experiences can be more fluid. You can have a sexy moment in the kitchen with your partner and then go right back to whatever you were doing and know that that partner is not going to hunt you down or, be, up your leg, biting up your leg, trying to get you in bed. So, yeah.
20 minutes, that's about as long as it takes.
Yeah.
I imagine also on the women's cycle, the libido is different on the cycle. So this is why it's important, I think, for men to understand the woman's cycle. And then the woman, of course, to understand her own cycle, because some periods of your cycle, you're just like horn dog
Yeah.
and all, like you're as randy
Yeah.
as the guys are, right? And then there are times where it's like, I need 20 minutes of something
Yeah.
before I'm even ready. So
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. So I think we can think about the cycle as like the seasons. Um, and there's time of growth and spring and when we need to line the inside of our uterus, right? And then there's times where it's shedding. There are times when we feel in our luteal stage we feel so gross and uncomfortable and the world is ending and it's awful. I'll be real. There are about 2 weeks out of the month that people with periods have a really hard time feeling sexy. You're either angry, frustrated, not feeling good, or you're actively bleeding, right? And so, because that spans, everybody thinks on your period when you start bleeding. That's not when all the symptoms happen. I'm sorry. You're going to be acting really cuckoo for the week before.
Yeah.
And so when men know nothing, actually, when women know nothing about their cycle, how many times are you getting into crazy arguments or irritations and you have no idea that it's just because you're on this terrible day of the month? So if we think about the seasons, we have moments where our uterus is kind of, building the lining when it's shedding, and we've got those, weeks where we don't feel good, and it's just really going to be difficult. So when men are aware of where someone is in their cycle, they're going to have a better time initiating at the right time. I have a little habit tracker, and sometimes my husband just peeks in there and goes, "Oh, okay." And so that can be really nice. I think communicating about it is really really good. Um, and back to what you said a few minutes ago, you said you can have the right lube, you can do all this stuff, but like when push comes to shove and you're in bed and it hurts, what do? You have to remember that we're not these really complex creatures. We really aren't, and we want to keep ourselves safe. And our nervous system is really the most important thing that I want to highlight. And I never recognized that until working with couples and recognizing how dysregulated people get when their nervous systems are, on fire. And so seeing something, 7 different times and knowing that it's safe, being touched 7 different times where it doesn't have to be 7, but being touched and knowing that you're safe and that you're not going to be forced to go have 70-mile-an-hour sex when you're just feeling like putting the windows down and looking out the windows. But so I think, I think that it's about realizing that your body needs to understand that something's going to be safe and understand that they don't need to brace. They don't need to tighten up, that they can relax. And that might not help the pain. There are times when that doesn't, and that's really disappointing. But there are different ways to experience pleasure. I always tell people when you have low libido and you're like, what do I do? You touch things and you enjoy the pleasure of what it feels like to touch it. You smell things. You look at things that cause you to feel pleasure. And you start noticing pleasure in your life in ways that just aren't sexual. And then you start noticing that those feelings are there all the time. Kind of reminds me a little bit of, psychedelics. When you get far enough in, you kind of recognize, oh my God, it was all here to begin with. The beautiful leaves of the trees moving with the sunlight coming through. That's not just because I did some sort of special thing. It's been here the entire time. And so I think it's important about recognizing that the intimacy has been there the whole time. There's just a lot of sadness and fear. Fear is the big one. Fear that this life you've built could be torn apart. And I tell couples, it is going to be very difficult for you to take apart your marriage and take apart your finances and take apart and do custody. It's going to be very difficult. But it's also going to be very difficult to fix your marriage. And you get to choose which kind of difficult you want to do. And I see people choose different ones, and it's not my responsibility to tell people if their marriage, isn't serving them. It's my job to help mirror back to people what they can't see themselves. When I'm with my husband, I have no idea. I have no idea the dynamic of us. I just don't get it. But when I see a couple, 20 minutes in, I'm like, oh, this, like totally makes sense. And I just wish, God, I wish I could do that to myself. It'd be really cool if I could.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a beautiful place to start coming to a close, but I want people to hear about your site, how to find you. You're licensed in California and Texas, but you coach, do other stuff. So say what you do, and your website is super cute. They need to go there and look at it just because it's cute, but also go there and learn some stuff. So if you want to share that information.
Absolutely. That reminds me, there's a photographer who he went to the Congo and took photos of just like really difficult things. And they're the most aesthetically stunning photos. They are the most beautiful infrared, just they're so easy to look at. And it made me realize that things people don't want to look at that make people feel squeamish, if you can make it palatable to them, if you can make it not scary, if you can make it fun, if you can just make it enjoyable for people, they're going to be interested in talking about this difficult topic. And so that is why I spend a lot of time pouring my personality and my creativity and everything into my website so that people can really see who I am before they ever pick up the phone. And so my website is Zillennial Intimacy. That's Zillennial, like millennial with a Z. And so that's because I'm kind of in this fun generation where, I grew up in the analog kind of days and then learned how to use technology, in my teens or whatever. And I think it's a really unique place. And so I started working with people of that age group, and it kind of has changed. So it's still called Zillennial Intimacy. I have free courses on there. I've got a lot of blogs where you can learn all sorts of stuff for free that you don't need to pay me to find out. You can book a session with me online. I do therapy, which is diagnosing, assessing, mental health treatment, and I do that in California and Texas. And then I do intimacy coaching in other states and other countries. It is different. It's more directive, less about trauma, less about emotion. It really has to be the right client. And then I do virtual retreats, which are really fun because you can go to a hotel of your choice or you can just stay at home, depending on what you want to do. And I know that doing a retreat for my marriage was just really exciting. It's a novel experience, right? It's something where we can mark time and realize it was there the whole time.
Yeah, and they can find your book on your website. Do you have your little cards on the website too?
I don't have them on my website anymore because it's been quite a few years since I sold them. I do have quite a bit of them left over, so if somebody just wants a pack or wants to buy one, I am happy to ship it to you if you send me an email, and it's really easy to get in contact with me on my site.
Great. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you think needs to be said to the listeners?
I don't know. I'm thinking, is there anything you asked that I didn't just go off on a tangent? So I'm sure I hit a lot of different points, and maybe the last thing I'll say is that I like to take advice from drag art. They take the part of themselves that they feel most insecure about, feel most scared about showing the world, and they make it their damn thing. They make it really cool. They are the coolest person. They show their personality so loud, and I think our expression of ourselves is so important. And I think that recognizing that the things I felt broken about, having ADHD, feeling like I can't keep a thought in my head, it's actually one of the best parts of me. I can think in this way that other people can't. I can go on tangents that lead us back to places. The amount of times I'm in sessions where we go off about movies or whatever, and then I bring it back, and it's so cool every time. And so Yeah, therapy is really interesting. It's really, really cool. It's relational, and it's about good therapy happens when you are close with your therapist and you feel like you can trust them. And so, yeah, it's about figuring out who is the right person for you. And so, if you liked my vibe, then maybe we can work together. And if I'm not the right therapist, I could help you find someone else.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And people can reach out to you via your website and learn more. And thank you so much for all your wisdom and being on the show today.
Yes, it was wonderful. And I hope some of the stuff was helpful. Um, and yeah, check out my book because really there's a ton of stuff that I talk about in sessions all in there. So it's on Amazon.
Beautiful. Okay. Have a good one. You have been listening to A Call to Healing. If today's conversation resonated with you, I encourage you to learn more about Maddie's work. You can find her at her website, zillennialintimacy.coach, which is filled with free blogs and resources to help strengthen your relationships and help you better understand intimacy. You can buy her book there, and you can connect with her there as well. I am Melanie McDaniel, and you can find me on Cenevita at cenevita.com/profile/unearthed. This podcast is supported by Cenevita, a platform helping practitioners spend more time in service and less time in the back office. Until next time, I hope you have a beautiful day.